Hey guys, so welcome to the ninth episode, season 4 of the Teen Whisperer Show. And in this season, we're going to discuss journeys of various podcasters all around the world and how they are doing podcasts, their future goals, and many more. So, in today's episode, we have the human entrepreneur and the founder of the ConnectUs. And the podcast is all about like different problems students has to face financially, socially, etc. And these are things that I quite agree because if students or student problems are addressed in the society, I think anyone can be amazing. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me introduce you to one of the hosts of the Human Entrepreneur podcast, Varun Balsara. Varun, welcome to the show, mate, and please tell a little bit about yourself and your podcasting career so far.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a huge pleasure. For me personally, my background started off. I'm a, I think I'm from Mumbai. I don't think I am from Mumbai, and I study at Warwick Business School. I'm a second year currently. I just finished my exams of my second year, so I'm in my penultimate year, uh, and I study a BSc in Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I founded ConnectUs basically as something that would potentially solve my problems of social anxiety and social isolation. So, as a as a student coming from a very different culture, going into the Western world, there was kind of like a culture shock, and I felt like I was not feeling at home. So I realized that I wanted to create something that would allow me to facilitate meaningful relationships. And I realized that that's a predominant problem. So ConnectUs was born as an idea. And since then, we've helped hundreds of people on campus find their meaningful relationships. So we have an algorithm and we match them using certain questionnaires that is grounded in research. Now, over a period of time, what I realized was as an entrepreneur myself and my co-host, both of us, with our own respective ventures, realized that entrepreneurship and especially student entrepreneurship is something that people don't usually talk about much and isn't given much importance in the rhetoric of entrepreneurship. Like whenever you see different types of podcasts, for example, in entrepreneurship, no one really talks about the student entrepreneur. What are the struggles they face? What are the problems they face? And while there might be similar problems to regular entrepreneurs, we also have to do an entire degree on the side, which adds to the stress, which adds to the burden. And it's not just a degree, right? It's the social life, it's the societies. And so what we realized was there's a huge gap in at least the podcast, like the podcast series that we've heard of these successful entrepreneurs, but nobody celebrates or hardly celebrates student entrepreneurs. And so what does that look like? And that was the inception of the human entrepreneur. Today we've ranked in the top 20 of the UK charts in entrepreneurship, and it's been an amazing journey. And the amount of people that I personally met, I don't know, it's a dream come true to record with someone who's also your best friend, but also kind of like a business partner now, and that's my co-host. And we've had some amazing times, and the journey has been phenomenal. It's just been about 6-7 months, and just the learning curve has been tremendous. And using this as our base, we're also then growing into a community, and we call this the youth entrepreneur movement. And what this basically does is it's empowering the student entrepreneurs, the youth entrepreneurs, to build themselves, to grow, to learn, and also connect with each other. And so we're facilitating workshops. We will be facilitating networking sessions. We will be facilitating any sort of help that a student entrepreneur needs. We will be there for them. And the whole idea of entrepreneurship, I think, is kind of what we describe as an entrepreneur is typically someone who has the skills of entrepreneurship and not necessarily someone who is starting their own venture. It can be someone who's already in, say, an organization, but is an entrepreneur. Anyone who wants to change and disrupt the status quo, innovate, that's who we call an entrepreneur. And so if you look at it from that lens, youth entrepreneurship is quite underrated. And we are here to support that movement.
Wow. That's an amazing story. But isn't anything like, a specific moment where it's actually instigated you to start a podcast, because there are tons of ways to addressing, student problems because, college conferences or clubs or anything like that. But what actually instigated, like, why podcast do you think that podcast actually solves, like addresses the problems of a student?
So the one journey was my co-host. His
Mm-hmm.
name is Luke. Both of us we study at Warwick University, and there's a pub there. It's
Okay.
called the Dirty Duck,
Mm-hmm.
and we going there for a meal. It was, I think, dinner time. This was at the end of first year,
Mm-hmm.
and typically nobody stays till the very end, because once your exams are done, you go home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we stayed for some reason on into the term three after exams, and the campus was very, like, deserted. So
Mm-hmm.
we had a lot of time to walk around, no distractions. Started having a chat. We started realizing that, look, we've gone through so much through this
Mm-hmm.
1 year. We've built something from nothing, but it's not been an easy journey. And one thing that kept us going was the fact that we had a lot of help and a lot of mentorship, and we were lucky to have that and grow our
Mm-hmm.
network. The problem is we knew other people within our circle and our networks
Mm-hmm.
and within the rest of the world that didn't have all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is the fastest and easiest way to get mentorship or to get content such as this, which is not available yet or is
Mm-hmm.
hardly available to the rest of the community, the student entrepreneur community? So we said, sure, let's try YouTube channel. But
Mm-hmm.
then YouTube channel involves a cost. That
Yeah.
cost is basically, well, hiring of equipment. We didn't really know much of video editing at the time, so
Mm-hmm.
we had to learn all of that, and lighting, and then you have to grow your subscription base, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
quite a saturated market because everybody today wants to start a YouTube
Yeah.
channel. And then so there was a lot of cost attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, okay, let's scrap that. Then there's the conferences, but then again, logistical issues, people signing up, people not signing up, people have to set a date, time, and then go, maybe not. And then we realized that while there may be other such, kind of different things, like you said, that you can address, like student
Mm-hmm.
conferences, we realized that the fastest way to do anything is a podcast today.
Mm-hmm.
And the trend is changing. If you look at the numbers, the
Mm-hmm.
amount of people that are actually starting podcasts today is increasing. So while it's a
Yeah.
saturated market, the demand for podcasts is a lot now,
Mm-hmm.
compared to what it was a couple of years back. And so on this trend, we were saying it's a great way to ride the wave to see what happens, but at the same time, it's a great way to create impact at a very fast rate.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you need? You just need a mic. And I remember starting out without a mic. My first recording was on my phone in a basement of a university accommodation. It
Mm-hmm.
started like that. So the cost of entry is completely minimal. You start
Yeah.
on Anchor, you create this sort of podcast, and then you distribute to the rest of the world. And that was something that was really easy to do. I love talking
Mm-hmm.
personally. My co-host was pretty good with talking as well. We had amazing people in our network,
Mm-hmm.
and we said, if we start a podcast, that network's only going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just start with the people we know? And that's just how it started, and that's just how we went. For more practical reasons, but also from the perspective of just reaching people. Today, I personally, and I'm sure you'll agree to this,
Mm-hmm.
we listen to podcasts on while working out, while
Yeah.
cooking, while cleaning the house, while walking down in your compound or in your building, or going for walks, working out. It doesn't really matter. Like podcasts, even in a bus journey or train journey, instead of looking at a video, you're now
Mm-hmm.
listening to a podcast, and you're downloading tons of information doing that.
Yeah.
So it just made complete sense to just start a podcast, and that's how it started.
Wow, and I think your friend, your co-host. I think you actually speak a lot about him. Is there anything reason like why you actually team up with him? Because I've seen a lot of people, in Facebook saying that my co-host aren't actually, up to par. They're not doing it. They're not consistent with me and everything. What actually made you go with him like all this way along?
So initially, like, with my other ventures, I realized that like a team is very important, but
Mm-hmm.
I also realized that the even more than a team is your partner, like
Mm-hmm.
your co-founder, co-host, whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I've not had the best relationships with my co-hosts, but something just clicked, because I think it comes from the fact that we shared a very strong, similar problem. The
Mm-hmm.
problem was, people were not being able to succeed as much, because of a lack of resources. There were a lot of basically asymmetries and frictions within the student entrepreneurial community. We understood that because
Mm-hmm.
we had that experience. And then it's just magic when you can actually find someone who relates to you on your same wavelength, and then you discuss the problem and you think it's been 1 hour, but the conversation's gone 4 to 5 hours. That's when you know that you found someone who's actually on your same frequency. And with him, he's very hardworking as well. And what happens is, like, when you find someone as hardworking as you, which is, it's a rarity when it
Yeah.
comes to doing projects on the side and studying, to find someone really working like their ass off, if I'm allowed to say that.
Of course.
And that's when I realized that there's something here. And while we may not have the best, like we may not be, the idea itself may not be very concrete at the time. There's something to it, and we both just approached it. So I said, let's just start a podcast and let's see where it goes from there. He agreed to it, and the next thing we know, we're in business, we're recording. And I think it's very important actually to start understanding that, like, you can't really walk the journey on your own for too long. You need you I at least personally would love to have someone along with me to walk that journey, and that's a co-founder. And a co-founder is like any relationship that you have. You need to have trust, you need to have communication, you need to be on the same wavelength, and more than that, the same page in terms of the goal, the vision for the podcast, for the project, whatever you do. So I think that was something that Luke and myself, we gelled really well with, and that's the rest is history.
Wow. I mean, like it's actually really hard to find those kinds of people. I mean, like people always think that click, like you said, I always call it a spark, and that spark, sometimes it's really rare to happen. But if it goes, it's really hard to come by as well. So I can totally understand you. And what are the progress that you actually made? When you said that you actually top in top 20 in UK charts. Is there any specific process that you did? Any promotional strategies? Any of that sort of stuff? Or it's just with the flow?
So one thing that I would say to anyone is, be authentic. Like, there is nothing that beats authenticity more than, you can do all your tactics that you want, but if people can connect with you on a deep fundamental level and say that this guy is authentic, if you can basically be yourself, because I feel like everybody has something to offer in this world. If you can tap on that and you can be authentic about that, most of your problems will be solved in terms of just ranking the charts. That's first, be really authentic. Second, be consistent. Now, don't set unrealistic goals. I'm going to have a podcast every single day. Well, maybe, but for how long can you sustain it?
Yeah.
Right? Because now if you have a captive audience that wants a podcast every day and you don't give it to them, then you're asking for trouble, right? Because then they're like, oh, he's not keeping consistent, I'm not going to follow him. So maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once in 2 weeks, or maybe it's a well-researched podcast that you release once a month. Doesn't matter. Be consistent. Third, there's no harm in asking for help. There's no harm in asking your audience. If you like it, please subscribe. People forget. People hear something and they're like, okay, I'm going to hear it next week, but they forget to share. It's just human tendency. We're bombarded with so much information. Your podcast is just probably one of those 100 things that they will probably be interacting with on a digital virtual level in the day. So there's no harm in asking for help. There's no harm in asking for reviews. There's no harm in saying, give me feedback. Listen to what they want and give them what they want, obviously in alignment with your vision and mission of your podcast. I think those three things, if you just follow easily, your thing will start ranking. Obviously, there's strategic things that you can do. In terms of your socials, keep your social media active, but keep a face behind it. So people genuinely love understanding the face behind so today in business, people connect with the person behind the business, not really the business. So first they'll connect with the person, then they'll connect with the business. So if you use that logic, you need to position yourself in such a way that people associate you with that brand, or you and your co-host with that brand, or whoever your teammates are. But so that would mean stories. Instagram has an amazing feature. Use that. So stories, constant engagement, so quizzes, posts, if you can, if it's feasible, giveaways. So essentially what you're really doing in a podcast, and if you want to grow your podcast, is building community. And once you have community, then you have the rankings, then you have the loyalty, then you have everything else that you really, wish for. So social media, posting regularly, but posting quality content. So you don't have to post every day if you don't have nothing to say. Like, it's better not posting every day, than posting every day but mediocre content. And
Mhm.
it's like there's no harm in being consistent once a week rather than being consistent every day, but make it quality.
Mhm.
And the other thing is engage with your user base. So talk to them, ask them what they want, ask them for feedback, ask them whether they like it, they don't like it. If they don't like it, why don't they like it? And be very open about it and learn to take a lot of feedback. There's going to be a lot of rejection. Maybe someone will tell you, I don't like your voice. What are you going to do about that? That's something you
Yeah.
can't do something about. Maybe you can hire a public speaking coach. Maybe you can learn to talk better. There are a
Mhm.
lot of techniques for talking better.
Yeah.
So you can go into that. But if you did not ask, you would never know, and hence
Mhm.
you will be stunting your own growth. So those are the couple of things that I would definitely want to say. But trumping all of that, be authentic. If you know your niche, stick to it, but be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else, because people will sniff that out. Be yourself 100%.
Yeah, and I just want to add a little more to I just want to ask being authentic. It's something that I always suggest because it's hard, trying to be someone else. You can't keep up with that. I mean, like if
Yeah.
you being yourself, even if you are hated for that, of course, I mean, two or three people will always be follow for that. So, what's your state in being authentic means? How do you actually position yourself as being authentic?
It's very easy today to look at Instagram influencers or top
Mm-hmm.
podcasters and be like, oh man, they're doing such great things, and then the automatic response is, come, let me try it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's them. Like, Tim Ferriss is Tim Ferriss, like Gary Vee is Gary Vee. Like,
Yeah.
why are you trying to emulate and be the next one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they all started being authentic themselves. They all started with 0 followers. They all started with 0 subscriptions. They
Mm-hmm.
grew, and the reason why they grew is because they were so authentic. So instead of emulating what they're doing today, try and emulate what they did before, which was
Mm-hmm.
when they had no followers. What did they do? They were essentially authentic people. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't try to be anybody else, because, like you said, it's unsustainable. You try and be somebody else, or try and put on a face, or put on an accent, or whatever you want to do on a podcast. People will sniff that out. It's the same thing as if you start a YouTube channel. So if that's the case, then why not be authentic? And how do you be authentic? It's like saying, how do you be yourself? Like, you have the answer to that question yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't do something that you're not going to do if the camera is off. Don't do something you're not going to do if the mic is off.
Mm-hmm.
If you can emulate yourself as a person on the mic, uh, obviously in a good way, like, you don't go around like bantering a lot of like crazy stuff online,
Mm-hmm.
or be, don't be rude and stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
don't try and, when I say don't be someone else, I don't mean, if you're rude, obviously don't be rude.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, I'm going under the assumption that
Really great.
everybody's they're nice people, and they're
Yeah.
positive people. They're non-violent. Under that assumption, be yourself. Like, I think everybody has something very unique to offer. The first step is finding that uniqueness, and then if there's a podcast, be that unique you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody else that can be you, so be you. And if that takes off, that's great. If not, maybe not. Maybe you won't reach the heights, but I'm sure with consistency, you'll find your people, you'll find your niche, you'll find your community. And trust me, it's there. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah, I can totally agree on that because one of the videos I actually said that you can't try to be Gary Vee because what Gary Vee does is that he itself says that he always interrupts his guests whenever he's trying to make a point. He interrupts and says things. So if you are trying to be Gary Vaynerchuk and you interrupt your guest every single time when someone is trying to say something, obviously they will just just close off the Zoom and they will they will just go off because he is Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, like he's allowed to do that, and he always does that. So people are accepting it, but you are not positioning yourself in that way. I mean, like if you're being in a great position and you do that, obviously people accept. But yeah, I think the things would go around. So so the one thing I want to ask you is kind of a like out of the context question. Like I think it's actually morning there. I think you're also in India, so obviously it's
Yeah.
exact time. Yeah, it's kind of confusing because I've been like doing with a lot of foreigners. So every single time I have to ask it's a morning or evening or
Yes,
night.
yes, yes.
So
The time zones are crazy. Like,
yeah,
you need to convert the time zones every time. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. So who was the last person that you actually made smile today?
Oh, today, as of now, nobody, because I literally woke up and I was like, I have to be on this podcast. So I prepared, had some breakfast, and I'm here. But I think the last person that I made smile was probably you, because I see a smile on your face.
Then
So
yesterday it
yeah,
seems.
that's you. Yesterday, I had a conversation with my parents, and since it's lockdown,
Mhm.
we chat because everyone's in the house.
Mhm.
So yeah, we chatted, and we had an interesting conversation, and we smiled.
Wow, parents, typical Indians. Wow, I guess I mean, like, what's your thought on this Indian culture? I mean, like, you're studying business school, you are doing podcasts, you are ranking UK charts. I want to ask, what's your thoughts on this Indian culture when it comes to podcasting? I mean, like, there are like the Ranveer show is actually on the top charts when it comes to Indian
Mm.
podcasting, and
Hmm.
Digital Pratik is there, and there are many people out there. So, what's your thought on those?
When you say thought, as in like, do you mean like culture wise what they're talking
Yeah,
about?
what talking about, depression,
I
mental
think
illness,
you
and then.
you you is a really good point about the Ranveer show. The reason why I like that, I personally listen to it as well, is
Mhm.
there's quality content in the sense that he's bringing people that you probably look up to, but
Yeah.
then kind of like bringing them down from the pedestal and talking
Mhm.
face to face, and looking at it as who you are as a human being.
Mhm.
um, and I love that kind of authenticity with the talk, with the chats. And I think one of the things that he's doing quite well is, because he's got a team and all of that, I
Yeah.
think taking content like the pillar content, as they call it, the 1 hour
Mhm.
long episodes, and then going micro content
Mhm.
within
Yeah.
that pillar content. So I think that's something that's done really well. In terms of Indian culture, there are some things that I really like. Now India is beginning to talk about mental health on a very massive scale,
Yeah.
and I personally really like that, because I've
Mhm.
suffered mental health
Mhm.
problems. I still am suffering. I suffer from an anxiety disorder. So
Mhm.
I've seen the progression of like where people usually don't talk about something, to
Mhm.
now people talking about it. But one thing that I'm really grappling with is, it's a very unfortunate thing that happened to Sushant.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a catalyst that then made the world, especially like Bollywood, the Indian world
Mhm.
at least, wake up and start talking about it. But it's kind of sad to see that like it took one person to take his
Yeah.
life to then, and surprisingly, it's a celebrity who's taken his life, and therefore people are talking about it. But if you
Mhm.
see the stats, it's not alarming that one a student every, like, I think it's every day or every minute, I'm not sure, but like
Mhm.
the frequency of students committing suicide on a regular basis
Mhm.
is so alarming. But up until now, no one was really talking that much about it.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing people come on social media, and I guess it's probably the halo effect, right? Like,
Mhm.
people, if something happens to someone very known, then people are like, okay, oh my god, there's a problem. And I guess that's, I don't know, I'm speculating human nature, but that's something that kind of saddens me to see that it
Mhm.
it, it takes someone big to create that kind of change,
Mhm.
trickle down change. But I
Yeah.
guess that's just my opinion, and that's where I'm coming from. And I think now that people are talking more about mental health, mental awareness, like podcasts are coming up.
Mhm.
There's a psychologists who have now started podcasts, with Indian
Mhm.
psychologists who
Yeah.
started podcasts. Uh, so I think that way, in the mental health culture side of things, I think there's a lot of chat about taking care of yourself, especially with the coronavirus, the lockdown. Mental health is going to be a huge thing. Even post COVID, people are going to need help. Uh,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of like damage that's already done, and the subsequent, residual of damage will
Mhm.
still be going on. And in doing that, I think there's a lot of positivity around mental health, and I think we need to start conversing a lot more. Sure, like we're doing enough, but I think we need to do a lot more. And especially on the human entrepreneur, like one thing that I was really certain of is we need to bring the human side of things. And if that human side is basically the side where we talk about mental health, we don't shy away from it. And that's again going back to authenticity. Like, that is who you are. Like, if you're
Yeah.
suffering something, you say it. And that's what we did. And that's exactly like what we've been doing with the guests. Also, we've been
Mhm.
bringing guests to talk about mental health. We've been bringing guests to talk about anxiety, how to cope with it, what does COVID look like, how can you deal with the uncertainties. I think that's very important, and I think the Indian podcasting world, I think, is going that way. So I'm optimistic with that in mind. Yeah.
It's really good that he actually, when you bring up Sushant, you don't believe, but I'm actually like not really a big fan, like a really big fan of him. But I really like the way that he acted in MS Sony, like the Untold Story. I really, really, liked
Mm.
it. So when I heard the news that he actually committed suicide, and I didn't saw the news. My sister-in-law actually texted me, saying that he actually committed suicide, and I actually was stuck. Like I was just still. I didn't do anything for 2 hours straight. I was just still. I didn't do anything. I don't know what to do. I mean, like, if people like him are committing suicide, then who are we? That's the first thought actually came into my mind. I mean, like, he's really rich, and he's really, like, he has actually bought a land in the moon itself. So if a guy like him is actually committing suicide, I mean, like, what were we? So, and you're right, because once that's done, people started posting things like, if you have mental pressure, you can talk to me and everything. I mean, like, all of a sudden everyone
Exactly.
became a mental doctor. I mean,
Hmm.
like, I don't know how is that even possible. And if someone, they say, they trust you and they say it, and you don't do well, as you said, then that's on you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something
Hmm.
that was really terrifying. But and after post COVID, people will definitely need many doctors, because they're totally completely out of the mind, blowing up, staying at home. So totally agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sorry. So the one thing that we're going to do is that it's actually called, I actually do this rapid fire round. Like, it's kind of related into podcasting and like life and funny kind of stuff. So
Sure.
just
Sure.
you can say a line or two about it. So let's start with that. So the
Yeah.
first is, what do you actually like about podcast?
The ability to reach so many people and the ability to grow your network simultaneously.
Awesome. What do you don't like about the podcast?
I think it's very saturated market. So you have to be very, very,
Mhm.
very sure and picky about your niche.
Awesome. So if you are facing, well, like, one biggest problem when it comes to podcasting, what would it be?
I think this is just a fear of what if you run out of content to talk about.
Well, I think you're a guest show. Obviously, you won't run out of guests, I guess.
But the thing is, you might not run out of guests, but if you bring the same guests, like in the same, like sure, the guest will talk in his or her own
Mhm.
tone or all of that, that's fine. But if you bring the same guest and they talk the same stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
it kind of becomes boring. So you need to
Mhm.
be very careful of how you curate your guests per season. So that's something that, it's like, what if you run out of people? What if you run out of it's a silly thought, but it's something that potentially can keep you up at night.
Yeah, because I actually interviewed a guy called Jesse Jackson. Okay, he's actually a musician.
Hmm.
He's 60 years old, and he's been doing podcasts for 5 years. And what he does is that he interviews people who is a fan of Bruce Springsteen. Okay, he's a singer actually, so he does that. And he said, I mean, like, he has done over like 400 or 500 episode, I think so. I mean, like, somewhere around there he did. So
Hmm.
he's really afraid that he might actually run out of guests, because he's actually a really old guy. Like, Bruce Springsteen is a really
Yeah.
old guy, and
Yeah.
only fans they have is like really old. So he's really afraid on that. So he's actually trying to change it, but I think, yeah, that's the fear when it comes to, like, when you're doing really niche oriented podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So next is, in case if you have never done podcast, like in your career, and if you have never done it, what else you would have done?
What else would I have done?
Hmm.
Hmm. I would have probably like done something with YouTube, or gone down that route. I think, like, for me, I really want to share my experiences with the world. So it would have probably been taking up to SoundCloud or YouTube. But if it's not podcasting at all, probably just done uh, or focus on like a couple of other ventures that I would have probably thought of at the time.
Awesome, awesome. So now next is, now don't take this in a negative sense. Is that if you are ever hit by a car, right? So, and the airbags actually light up in your face, and who would be the first person that actually comes to your mind at that last dying breath?
Ooh, uh, who would be the last person that comes to my mind? Mm, I think it would be my parents, like both of them.
Wow, that was really took a lot of time. That's nice. Awesome, because mostly, like, every single guy always is, I don't know why it's always, when it comes to Indians, always people say mothers, or I mean, not like Indians, but people have interviewed so long, they always say that their mother or father, their parents, like, I don't know, but yeah, right. I mean, like, yeah, I
it's
can
it's
sense that.
either it's either my parents
Mhm.
or My dog.
Ah, that's nice.
Like either one. I'm not sure which one would it be, but it would definitely be one of them if I'm not lying. Yeah. It's
Awesome.
actually a very difficult question. I've never I've never really thought of it.
So the final question is that if in case you want to get out of this interview, all right now, what excuse would you say?
My mic's not working.
Wow.
I'll
that.
literally pretend.
Uh,
I'll literally do that or something like that, and I'll type, "My mic's not working. Sorry, let's reschedule," and then I wouldn't respond to you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
no, I mean, like it's actually nice because this is actually like some of the really good answers. But once I got stand-up comedy onto my show, like it was like seventh or sixth episode, and he said I would say that I have diarrhea and I have to go. He said something like
Yeah,
that.
that's
So
a good one.
yeah, in the morning when you hear that, he kind of disgusting, but he's stand-up comedy. Now, of course, he's supposed to do that. So yeah. Awesome,
Yeah.
right. So, just one final question before closing is that what do you actually think is the best tip that you can provide in the whole world to a fellow podcaster in order to grow? The best tip in the whole world, according to you.
Start. Just start. Just start today. Like right now. Like figure out your
Mhm.
niche. Figure out the people you want to talk to, and just start. Everybody will be available.
Mhm.
Everything will come. You just need a phone. Don't tell me you don't have a phone or a computer. I'm sure you have either one of them.
Mhm.
You can figure out a way to record. Just start. Figure out your niche. Figure out your, and the niche comes with figuring out your passion. Figure out that, like, what do you really want to do? Who do you really want to communicate with? Just start, and people will come. And you're in a COVID zone. Everybody is currently at home. People aren't working as much. They have some time. They will. The likelihood of them saying yes is a little more.
Mhm.
Start. It's the perfect opportunity.
Awesome, guys. You have listened. So, what are you waiting for? I guess. Well, Varun, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really means a lot. And guys, we have discussed a lot of things in this podcast. And like always, I give timestamps below in our YouTube channel, in our in podcast, and everywhere, so you can go and check him out as well. And Varun, if someone wants to contact you or your podcast, like what are the places that they can find you?
So it's called The Human Entrepreneur. You can just check us out on Instagram. I'm kind of like, one sec, I'll just tell you the exact
Yeah.
handle. So it's the underscore human underscore entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And yeah, most of our stuff that we present are community based. The stuff that we'll be launching called the Youth Entrepreneur Movement. That is an exclusive Facebook group.
Mhm.
So we're only taking people who are really interested in innovation, in change, irrespective of what you do, be it a podcaster, be it
Mhm.
someone who wants to change the world in the social setting or in a tech. Doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're an innovator, a change maker. And in high school or in university, this will be a really interesting thing. But we're taking applications, so you have to fill up a form before we get it, because we don't want we want to make it really
Yeah.
exclusive and with people who genuinely
Mhm.
care and value for this course. So all our stuff, all our information is on there. Our links to the podcast itself are on there as well. It's
Mhm.
called The Human Entrepreneur. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. um, yeah, let's connect. And for
Awesome.
me personally, you can find
Mhm.
me on Varun Balsara.
Mhm.
Best place to connect with me would be LinkedIn, but also Instagram.
Mhm.
Varun Balsara is the thing. So the handle, I can share it with you.
Awesome, guys, and I will give a link in everything in the description below, so I can go and check them out as well. And if you have any questions about him and the Facebook community, you can ask him out. And if you have asked him, ask me, I will directly forward it to him, of course. So looking forward to guys. And Varun, thanks so much for coming out to the podcast. So and it really means a lot. So is there anything like you want to say at last to our audience?
Yeah, just um, start. Just I can't stress this enough. Like, you can plan and you can do as much as you want, but
Mhm.
you'll only know what's going on when you start. So first recording, do it today. Contact your guests today. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no, and that's fine. You keep growing from there.
Yeah, obviously there are 7.7 billion people in the world. I mean, like someone is bound to say yes, I
Yes,
guess so.
exactly.
Awesome. So, guys, thanks so much for listening to the podcast, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Make sure to subscribe to it, and see you soon.